we are going to be painting a landscape on your plate. So we just looked at several different landscapes, and with a landscape it's a lot of, you guessed it, land. Here we have the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. So things are getting further and further back. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to be creating our sky, and we're going to be using white to add with our sky. So that's going to be a tint. When you add white to a color, it's called a tint. When you add black to a color, it's called a shade. So for our sky, we're going to be making a tint, but for the ground, we're going to be making shades and tints. So we're going to start off with our sky. The first thing I want to do is write my name on the back and my class code. Next thing I'm going to do is just kind of trace the middle little line just where I know the sky is. When I do my sky, I'm going to dip my brush in the blue, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint some of this blue on here. When we're painting a plate, it's a little different than painting a flat piece of white paper. So you just have to make sure you get all those edges. But once you start painting your blue, then what you can do, I kind of add my white to it. So we've got our blue here. I'm going to add a little bit of white. And then you're going to have different colors of that blue. You're going to have some light, you're going to have some dark, and I can go back and put some over it. I don't like to mix it too much. I like there to be like lines of white and lines of dark blue. So I'm going to add a little bit more in just a minute. So here's some blue. You could do the whole thing just in blue first and then add a little bit of white. I'm kind of going in between. So by adding white to a color, we're going to get a tint. By adding black, it's going to give us a shade. So I'm still doing my sky, which is a tint. I get these edges. Okay. And it looks okay. I still see a lot of white in here. There we go. I don't want to see the paper plate underneath the paint. What I'm going to do is actually add some more white in here, just so it looks kind of like different colors of light blue. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little bit more blue. Alright, that looks nice, I think. Before I'm finished, I think I'm going to add some clouds. So I'm going to take my brush and just kind of wipe off the extra blue. Get a little bit of white. Just kind of go over top of that. And if you want, you could wait for this to dry a little bit. You could work on the land, so maybe I'll do that for the rest of them. And wipe that off. Okay, I'm going to set my brush down. Next thing I do, I'm going to draw some lines to show the different foreground, middle ground, and background. So I'm just going to draw some lines on here to show that. So I'm going to kind of come down here and here. So this is going to be my foreground, this is going to be my middle ground, and this is going to be my background. I'm going to take my brush, make sure all that paint is off. And I think in my foreground here, I'm going to add white, because that's going to be the lightest, that's going to be the closest to me, just like this. And then in the middle ground is just going to be the regular green. And then the background is going to be the darker green. And how do we get a darker green? We add black. So I'm going to start off with my middle ground here with just some regular green. Sometimes, because your plate is not flat like a piece of paper, you may need to kind of hold it, and you may do a better job of holding it rather than having it sitting on the table. Alright, so here's this. It's pretty good. The next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of white. So I'm going to start with some green, just like I did with my sky. Here. And notice I haven't painted the whole thing green yet, and now I'm going to add just a little bit of white over top of that to lighten that up. So we have a nice light green. And if you get the whole thing finished and you feel like maybe it's not light enough, you can go back over that a little bit. I'm running out of space to hold it because it's all wet. There we go. Make sure you get these little teeny pieces where the land and the sky meet. Looks pretty nice. If you wanted it a little bit lighter, you could actually add a little bit more white in here. It's up to you. Like that. Make sure you get those edges. And then here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add some black with my green. I'm just going to wipe my brush off a little bit, get off some of that white. I think I'll go green first. Green. When you add black to a color, you hardly need any black at all. So since this part's going to be black, I'm just going to barely dip my brush. You can see, teeny bit. And I'm just going to mix it right on the plate. And if you want a little bit darker, get a teeny bit more. Just like that. So now I've got my foreground, my middle ground, and my background. And then what we're going to do, we're going to wait for this to dry a little bit, and then we can come back and add some details. And when we add the details, we can also add some more clouds. Maybe I'll add a little bit. Let's see. Okay, that's pretty good. So we're going to let this dry. My name is on the back. It's going to go in the drying rack. But just so you remember, for our sky, we added the blue and we added white, which gives us a tint. We kind of left it streaky a little bit so it looks like different colors of blue up in the sky. For the land, for our landscape, we have foreground, middle ground, and background. And for the foreground, we used a tint. We used the green and the white, so it was really close to us, and then it gets darker as it goes back. And for the middle ground, we used regular green, and then for the background, we used green and added a little bit of black, and that's our shade. So we'll let this dry, and then next time we come, we can add some details.